advancements in amount mechanical propositions and new technologies that allow us to more perceive our macrocosm and understand the answers to questions we no way believe possible to answer feel to be developing every single day as exploration scientists work to give us with new perceptivity and exposures to our macrocosm that break the boundaries of what we ever allowed was possible. These findings will frequently generate new propositions and enlightenments that will beget indeed the most stoic of people the need to sit back and collect their studies in order to come to terms with propositions that are so mind-blowing they're frequently groundbreaking in their own right. So moment we will be visiting 5 propositions about our veritably own macrocosm that will absolutely blow your mind. We live inside a black hole. The Big Bang has been a scientific discovery that has led a numerous physicists and exploration scientists scratching their heads since its first appearance, when scientists refocused their sensitive measuring bias towards the sky and picked up on the large amounts of background radiation of the macrocosm that helped to paint an informational picture as to the original moments in time that our macrocosm began. More questions began popping into their heads than could be answered. The most significant question sounded to be the most recursive. If the Big Bang created the macrocosm, also what created the Big Bang? This was a question that would go unanswered for numerous decades and numerous others trying to abandon the study altogether. How can we see what happened before anything ever indeed happened? This study would soon change after mathematicians would make a strange comparison between the Big Bang and an doubtful Elysian body that was still regarded as nothing further than proposition black holes. Now the proposition behind black holes was further than just shrouded in riddle, and it wasn't until a man by the recognizable name of Albert Einstein helped humanity to realize that space and time are simple and connected in commodity we relate to as the fabric of space-time. Interestingly enough, the fine proposition of mass also being suitable to stretch and distort this fabric analogous to that of a gemstone resting on a cloth led to an innovative idea relative to the limits of this deformation. It was in the calculation that scientists believed that if the mass of an object grew to a certain size, this would beget the fabric of space-time to stretch, and the mass, although finite, to be compressed into a zero-dimensional point with no volume, creating an oddity, or as we generally relate to as a black hole, with a gravitational force so great that light itself couldn't escape it. Of course, originally numerous scientists believed that an horizonless viscosity was insolvable, and that such an circumstance in the calculation was an egregious excrescence that worked to prove the bar sinister of general reciprocity, and that black holes could not conceivably live. Of course, this would come to change in time as better technology has allowed us to observe the goods of gravitational deformation and the large supermassive black hole located at the center of our world. But an intriguing comparison was made between the nature of black holes and the nature of the Big Bang. In the meantime, it came egregious to amount physicists that the calculation fully added up that the Big Bang appeared to be the inverse perspective of the black hole, leading numerous physicists to believe that the creation of our macrocosm veritably well could have been the creation of a black hole, and that actuality and the stretching of space-time as we know in reference to the expansion of our macrocosm could simply be us being inside of a oddity. Could it be possible also that we are simply a product of an outside aging macrocosm, and that the original creation of our macrocosm was from this event? Farther substantiation is handed when conniving out the fourth-dimensional graphing of the timeline of our macrocosm that shows a growing breadth from a oddity stretching out analogous to an horizonless viscosity could stretch the fabric of space-time, leading numerous further scientists to find this proposition to be a licit answer to the question of the Big Bang and horizonless circle. The world of infinites in mathematics have led to a tremendous quantum of perceptivity when agitating aspects of abstract calculation, none more so than the advancements made by George Harmonizer and fellow great mathematicians. This had still led to numerous complications in the world of real-world operations relative to the conception of infinites. A sphere in this regard could be considered an object with horizontalless points on its face, and when the calculation is worked out rightly, one could in perfect fine proposition produce two perfect spheres with the same mass, size and viscosity of the original sphere. This is appertained to as the Banach-Tarski incongruity, and however numerous scientists had originally regarded the generalities of this operation as insolvable in the real world, the calculation was right. It wasn't until numerous decades latterly that multitudinous experimenters had begun noticing strange propositions coming to light. The CERN Institute, during its testing of flyspeck collisions and subatomic patches breaking down, began noticing a creation of further patches than originally started with. In fact, a paper had lately been published believing that not only was the Banach-Tarski incongruity applicable in the real world, but that numerous of the computation crimes and exploration at CERN helped to prove that this miracle was formally naturally being. If this exploration is correct, it could mean that the traditionally held propositions of the laws of conservation of energy could be entirely incorrect, and that new patches could be reproduced from being patches naturally. This, alongside the being mind-blowing proposition that we live inside a black hole, could veritably well mean that every time a new black hole is created, a macrocosm, a misdupe of our own, could be created as well. This could veritably well mean that we are wedged in what appears to be an horizontless circle as the macrocosm forms and dies and numerous times and falls into a black hole and restarts each over again. Of course, since the veritably laws of the macrocosm are unchanging, this would mean that all of the factors relative to creation would stay the same and eventually produce a macrocosm that would play out exactly as our own. Could it be that you have seen this veritably videotape over 1 trillion times formally? Regarding new propositions, it could veritably well be possible. Multiverse proposition. One astounding disclosure made by a Mount physicist that has converted indeed the most auspicious individualities into nihilists is the conception of the multiverse proposition. When pondering the fine counteraccusations and probability of the macrocosm forming, as well as other propositions in regard to dimensional mathematics, physicists began positing a study trial forward. Why did our macrocosm form with these specific rules, with these specific figures and laws of mathematics? Scientists believe that the odds of this being are so astronomical that it is far from probable that every variation of every possible macrocosm exists to allow similar circumstances. What is indeed more intriguing is that experimenters believe they've substantiation of the multiverse proposition being in the natural world, given the complete probabilistic determination of amount mechanics and its parcels, similar as Heisenberg's query principle and the conformation of virtual patches. This could veritably well mean that every possible variation of every macrocosm and every decision ever made could more than live and could potentially one day be explored. Philosophically, this idea could lead to newer outlooks of nihilism and absurdism that may lead people to bandy the meaningful counteraccusations of opinions if every possible decision exists infinitely throughout the multiverse, making nothing unique, meaningful, or indeed significant in any possible was. Last Thursday ISM. Continuing this idea in respects to a allowed trial put forth firstly as a joke but now proven to be a licit point of debate. Last Thursday ISM explores further the absurdist extremity in respects to the multiverse proposition and its mathematics. It states that everything that presently exists in the macrocosm, and that the macrocosm itself was simply created last Thursday. One could essay to argue that there is essential evidence of time being before this point, and that the macrocosm has indeed been around a lot longer than that, but any substantiation handed is not objective evidence and is rather private interpretation. If you have a videotape recording of a time before last Thursday, one could argue that the device, the data, and everything simply popped into actuality to give the vision of the macrocosm having been around much longer than it actually has. This could be a counter-argument for any point raised against the doctrines of last Thursday ISM, which could include video substantiation, sensitive measuring outfit, natural miracle being conduct, and indeed your own recollections. What is all the more mind-blowing about this proposition is that it mathematically works. Given the generalities handed in the multiverse proposition of every macrocosm of every possible variation popping into actuality, it could veritably well be the case that our case of space and time was simply created last Thursday, and any other substantiation to argue against the fact could simply have been popped into actuality as well. This conception eventually argues that only the then and now is real, and that only you could ever know that you live. This eventually begs the question, is anything we've ever endured actually real, or the product of a macrocosm that just popped into actuality last Thursday? Given the mind-blowing propositions, we are relatively certain that your mind is bulging with questions when it comes to the nature of ourselves and our macrocosm. Be sure to partake your answers and questions below in the comment section, and let us know what's contending through your mind. Thank you so much for watching, and be sure to stick around to help grow our community and help us to work to break these unexplained mystifications.